Hello, horror fans and suspense fans. This is DeathGroundReviews, the monster that devours horror, suspense, and all those things the fantastic. And I'm back with another book review. So, for those of you who have followed me for a while, you know I've reviewed Rami Ungar's work before. You've also probably listened to my discussions of horror movies with Rami as well. One of my earlier reviews covered his novel titled Rose, and I also reviewed his novella, The Pure World Comes, for the Darksire Journal. Now he has released a short story collection through BSC Publishing, and it's titled Hannah and Other Stories. You know, short story collections are sort of a gateway for discovering a new author. They're sort of a sample bar of all that author's subject matter, stylistic perks and quirks, character types, themes, etc. Whenever someone shows interest in an author I love, I often suggest a short story collection by that author for them to dip their toe. And I think for now on, I'm going to suggest Hannah and Other Stories to anyone who asks about Rami Ungar. I must say, I quite enjoyed this collection. So this collection was fairly short. My Kindle version came to 229 pages. It showcased, I think, 6 to 7 stories. And Rami loves to write about monsters. That's a common theme you'll find throughout this collection, are monsters. Some of them are more human monsters, and then some of them are otherworldly, just cosmic type monsters. And he loves to write about themes of possession, themes of obsession, and themes of transformation, particularly monstrous transformation. And a standout story for me from this collection, one of my favorites, was titled The Autopsy Kid and Dr. Sarah. So in this story, Rami leads us into very deeply visceral and just disturbing territory, the life of what looks to be the making of a serial killer. And it's also the story of a poor girl who becomes entangled in this guy's twisted, manipulative game. Using social media as a weapon, a realistic fear in our culture today, this maniac coaxes Sarah to follow him deeper and deeper into his insane, sadistic games. The story is a real heart-pounder. Rami doesn't show any mercy with this one. When you read the climax of it, it will have you verbally exclaiming, no way, he's not going to take it that far. But yet, a part of you knew this was the inevitable place for the story to go. If I were to rate this story, I'd definitely give it an A+. However, that is not the story that opens the collection. The story that opens the collection is titled Hannah. So in this story, well, first I want to say, in this story you get a sense of Rami's interest for ghost hunting. If you've ever seen Rami's YouTube channel, you'll find some videos of his own real ghost hunting adventures, which are kind of interesting. Check it out. But in this story, so it's about a ghost hunting team that explores this abandoned building, and they come across this very troubled spirit that's sort of trapped in the scene of how it died, in a sense. And this ghost hunting team becomes the means of helping it find closure and helping to sort of set it free. And, I must say, I found the ghost hunting team and their equipment probably the most interesting aspect of the story. Sadly, the rest of it was pretty underwhelming for me. Nothing much in it particularly spooked me. If I were to rate it, I'd give it a B, probably. I mean, structurally and technically, it works fine, but yeah. The next story, titled Queen Alice, on the other hand, shows some real scary malice. So this is a horror tale that resonates. It lingers in your mind long after you've read it. Do you guys remember the myth of Slender Man, along with other creepypasta stories? Stories that spread virally across the internet, developing a life of their own. Well, that's what happens here. And Queen Alice from Wonderland, the image and symbol, is the catalyst for it all. During a key climactic moment in the story, the antagonistic character thinks to herself, Was Lily Forson created for Queen Alice? Or was Queen Alice created for Lily? And, that right there really encapsulates sort of the theme of the story about obsession and possession. And this might be the most thought-provoking tale in the collection. The monster in the story does more than gross you out or give you a jump scare, It seeps into your mind, it seeps under your skin and truly terrifies you. It's a monster that reflects our fears of the possessing power of social media culture. And it works really well. I give this story an A++ for sure. The next one, titled Fuseli's Horses, is a story that is just plain fun, guys. So, it's a simple monster story. It's about these horses with an unusual appetite. Let's just say they can deliver a vicious bite. And this is a type of story you could see as an episode on like Tales from the Dark Side or The Outer Limits. It's a fun sort of popcorn monster story. Yet it's centered through Rami Ungar's unique imaginative lens. Next, we have a story titled The Red Bursts. So this one's about David and Joe, their husbands, and they've traveled to this town called Wolfgrass, and they're searching for David's sister Terry. So they've lost contact with her. David's become worried, and they've traveled to the town to find out what's going on. And when they arrive, though, they discovered that shit's just hit the fan. There's just carnage, wreckage, and there's certain groups of people that have just gone berserk and homicidal. And they all display these strange burn marks along the edges of their eyes. And it's caused by these thundering red bursts of light. Rami unpacks events throughout this story masterfully. He creates a very splendid feeling of suspense. And I just want to say, if M. Night Shyamalan ever comes across Rami Ungar's short story collection, I hope he decides to adapt this story into a movie, because it would make a perfect M. Night Shyamalan movie. Just gotta say. So next we have a story titled What Error Awoke. This is a story about a young man named Jake Dalland. And he had a bizarre experience where he fell sort of into this realm of strange monsters and whatnot. And he's taking this literature class, and a man named Taylor is the grad student teacher, and they're reading a poem called The Fairy Queen. And while they're reading it, he sort of relives this bizarre experience and goes into kind of a trance-like state. And later he talks to Taylor and tells him his story of his experience. And Taylor, sees the kid as just imaginative, maybe somewhat troubled. He doesn't take it too seriously. Well, Jake eventually starts talking about this on YouTube. And he starts gaining some followers. And Taylor comes across this. And it makes him worry a bit more. He's like, oh no, this kid's delusional. And all these people are enabling his delusion by liking his videos and commenting and whatnot. And but eventually, monsters start showing up in Taylor's life, right? And now he realizes these monsters are real. And what Jake has discovered is that through talking about it, he has awakened a fertility goddess named Hayaltepa. I think I pronounced that right. And he believes the goddess is the source of the pandemic and other rising natural disasters. And there's other parties in the story that want a piece of this monster's power as well, including one called Angry Man. And he's one who wants to use the power to sort of stomp out communists and the deep state and other elements of his paranoid delusion in the hopes of, as he puts it, to keep America great. And to be honest, I couldn't get into the Angry Man. He didn't feel much like a character to me, but he felt more like a paranoid, exaggerated conglomeration or enumeration of like alt-right political leanings. And the Angry Man sort of looked like everything Rami hates about Trump. And then he sort of turned it into a punching bag in his story. And after all, Rami has admitted that he likes to take revenge on people he dislikes by writing them as villains in his stories. And maybe that's what he was doing here. But the overall effect of it just didn't quite work for me. I just found it distracting. It pulled me out of the story. It reminds me a little bit, if any of you have read Dreamcatcher by Stephen King. I've read part of it. I didn't get through the whole book, but I remember the main alien hunter. He didn't feel like a character necessarily either. He felt more like Stephen King's enumeration of everything he hates about conservatism. And that's kind of what the angry man felt like to me in Rami's story. The final story in this collection is titled Poor Unfortunate Souls. I couldn't quite get into this one either. So it's about a character named Ozma, who's a transgender sobriety coach. And she gets dragged into a party by a girl named Naomi, who's a drug addict, kind of snob rich girl. And this party happens to exist in the Paris catacombs, which is an interesting setting. There's also a monster that inhabits the catacombs. And this was a monster born of a human mother, and she was so horrified by her baby that she abandoned it. And over the years, this monster learns of human life by absorbing the body and minds of people who wander into the tunnels. And Ozma eventually makes a sort of life-changing revelatory encounter with this monster. And I must say, I did like the somewhat Frankensteinish backstory for the monster. I found the theme of that to be quite interesting. And again, a story existing in the Paris catacombs is always intriguing. Yet I feel like Rami's just trying too hard here. Some aspects of the conclusion of the story are a bit too on the nose, and the overall effect for me was hollow and flat. However, I do like Rami's ambition on this one. Overall, this collection is a strong effort from Rami Ungar. I give it a 4 out of 5 rating. And what really stands out here is that Rami has found his voice in this collection, and these stories, they feel unique to him. And so I'd say do yourself a favor and introduce yourself to the universe of Rami Ungar by checking out Hannah and Other Stories. And that concludes my review. This is DeathGroundReviews, the monster that devours horror, suspense, and all those things of the fantastic. Horror fans, I'll see you next time.